hope that by my coming here, many of the other candidates who are running will come also, because, you know, there's a small chance that I might not win. And I would want whoever wins to really be very familiar with this issue.
Seeking to get out from under the Trump barrage, one POTUS candidate decided his best place to make news was the Arizona-Mexico border. The photo op made its point. But did he make any points by becoming just another candidate to talk about troops and drones along the line? One of the issues we'll deal with as we unlock the cage, release the political animal. She is fresh back from the campaign trail in Iowa and likely has seen enough corn on the cob for several months. Senior political reporter for the National Review, Alexis Levinson, and he is not one who had the chance to partake in fried everything this week. Maybe someday. The senior project manager at Hathaway Strategies and former spokesman for President George W. Bush, Pete Seat. I thank you both for being here. Alexis, let me ask you first of all, before we get to Iowa, Ben Carson is so interesting what he has done here as he has gone to the border and he has talked about 6,000 troops along the border and using military drones to get the job done here. Do you believe that this is, in many ways, just sort of his, not knee-jerk, but his response to Donald Trump to try and soften that a little bit and get himself into that conversation?
I don't know that it's a response to Donald Trump. Ben Carson has actually been in the conversation, I'd say, more than a lot of the other ones, because he's one of the only other candidates who seems to be rising in the polls. What I do think is that border security this cycle, or immigration in general, is really, Republicans are really looking at it as a security issue. And you hear that over and over again. And that, you know, this is a security issue, and with the sanctuary city and the, you know, the shooting, this is moving away from how do we fix the immigration system to how do we keep the country safe, and that seems to be terms that Republican voters are really resonating with Republican voters, and I think that's why you're hearing this kind of rhetoric.
So, Pete, Ben Carson on the border, Donald Trump, of course, is pushing the immigration debate, and the American public is reacting, putting him on top of the polls. But from your opinion, from your experience, is this a winner? Can the GOP ride immigration, put everything else aside, and ride this to a win in 2016?
We've tried multiple times to make immigration a forefront issue. It's an important issue, but I don't know that it's necessarily going to put a Republican in the White House if that is the number one issue. You know, a lot of Americans are looking at the economy. Alexis is right. They're looking at security from a broader perspective, and this is a component of that. But to your point, Ed, earlier, I think Trump is driving this conversation. Immigration is always part of a Republican campaign and a Republican debate. But what Donald Trump has been saying about immigration, the fact that he put a plan out the other day, candidates like Ben Carson and others want to be a part of this this Trump circus that's taking place right now. And immigration is the easy way to make sure we're talking about him on TV like we are right now.
All right, let's switch to another candidate here, Pete, because you wrote an article entitled Carly's Challenge. And I think it's very interesting, too, because there seems to be a storyline coming out now that the way CNN is going to decide who is on the first tier of the next debate that comes up, that she won't be able to make it. And there's people thinking that maybe CNN and others are trying specifically to make sure that she does not get onto that stage and get her message out there. It does seem rather strange, seeing as how well she did in the JV debates.
Yeah, CNN's criteria is very different than the Fox News debate criteria, which only used 5 polls taken right before that debate. CNN is using polls dating back to July 16th. And there are a lot of zeros, a lot of ones that Carly Fiorina was getting then. And I think there's also a difference between Carly Fiorina fans and Carly Fiorina voters. I would venture to guess 9 in 10 or 10 out of 10 Republicans would want to see her in that main stage primetime debate, but they're not necessarily voters of Carly Fiorina when that pollster calls, and that's the question that matters the most.
So, Alexis, is that fair to go all the way back to July 16th, and are you worried indeed that there might be some sort of I don't want to say conspiracy here, but certainly just some sort of a method not to include her on that main stage?
I don't think there's, I have no idea. I assume there's not a conspiracy. I think the problem the networks are having is how on earth do you deal with 17 candidates, and they're trying a variety of solutions because it's a logistic nightmare, basically.
Do you think that's fair, though, to go back to July 16th?
I mean, what's the difference between that or only picking the most recent 5? The most recent 5 were the ones that catapulted Donald Trump into the top, and, you know, that ended up with him on the stage. If you'd only taken ones from months ago, you might have had him lower down. He wasn't running. It's going to be, no one's going to be happy no matter what happens if they're not in the top 10. So,
absolutely fair. Now, as I mentioned, you've just gotten back from Iowa, and I got about a minute left here. What's the general thinking in Iowa? I mean, we hear in the media, we hear what's coming back to us, but are they that excited about Donald Trump? Is there something we're missing that's not coming out of Iowa that we're not getting? You know,
I wasn't actually there when Trump alighted on the Iowa State Fair in his helicopter, and I'm a little bit devastated about that. But, you know, like, I saw the pictures. I heard from the other reporters who were there. It was a scene, and there were hundreds and thousands of people surrounding this guy in a way that I didn't see for any of the other candidates when I was out there. I was out there for Scott Walker, who for the longest time was, like, dominating in Iowa polls. And he's now dropped behind Ben Carson and Donald Trump, and you could see that. I mean, he had a lot of people around him. He had a lot of people following him around, but it was not the Trump circus.
Okay.
And whether the Trump circus really translates into votes, we don't really know yet, but people really like him.
Pete, I got 20 seconds left here. Do you think any of the other candidates will start to become a little Trumpified themselves, kind of take a little hint and attack that way?
Well, you're seeing a little bit of that in the rhetoric. I mean, Ben Carson has always been a little further right, but the fact that he's talking about the immigration issue in the way he is, I think, is part of the Trump, you know, the oxygen being taken out of this entire primary by Donald Trump.
Yep, the Trump way of doing things. We'll see who actually takes up the mantle next. Alexis, Pete, thank you so much for being here. I certainly appreciate your time. Now you viewers get to tell us, who is your candidate of choice for the GOP nomination? Go to NewsmaxPolls.com. Tell us. We'll continue to cover it right here on the fastest 60 minutes in news, The Hardline.